Let's talk about a crazy ending here on the FCS, Steven. I know you were paying attention to it. This was one of the most exciting games, probably in FCS all year, all season. It was between Holy Cross and Fordham. It was for the lead in the Patriot, and this one came down to the wire. I mean, to the very wire, Steve. Take me through this one and take me through the crazy ending.
By far, these are the two best teams, not only in that particular league, in the FCS, but you can probably say in the Eastern time zone, these are the two best teams that are playing on the East Coast. You had a Fordham team that literally had the most efficient, with the most passing yards, the most touchdowns in Tim DeMorat. So as great as Holy Cross's defense is, and I will still say, despite giving up 45 points, I will still tell you that they are the most dominant defense in the FCS when everything kind of falls into place as far as they're playing their opponents. But you had a little bit of everything. You had Holy Cross struggle, at first trying to get their offense going. They jumped out to a lead. You had, for the second week end in a row, you had an awful, god-awful, fireable official call have a direct impact on what could have been the final outcome, but certainly going into the half, where you had a referee call, a personal foul call on a lineman, because the Fordham lineman jumped up to block the pass, and all he did was do a regular block, but hit him up, here in the chest. They considered that, even though he didn't leap to do the hit, where it wasn't any kind of a targeting. He just reacted to the Fordham defender leaping up. They called that, so a touchdown came back, and ultimately then Fordham was able to score and took the lead going into the half. And then from that point on, and from the third quarter on, it was quarterback to quarterback. It was Clubber Lang and Rocky Balboa between Sluka and DeMorat. It was just back and forth. You had the occasional key defensive stop, and it was looking for a while that the home team, Holy Cross, was on the mat, and maybe they weren't going to make the count. They had some standing 8 counts there at a point, but eventually the game got tied. You went into overtime. And literally, because Fordham's offense was just so ridiculous, combined, before we even went to overtime, both teams combined had over 1,000 total yards. And actually, Holy Cross, who had been trailing most of the time, actually had 100 more yards than DeMorat. But DeMorat accounted for 6 touchdowns.
That's incredible.
It was just an amazing, but it was literally one play, boom, in the end zone in the first overtime. They decided to kick the extra point. Holy Cross had a more of a sustained, you want to really call it a drive, because they start at the 25, but there was more of an actual drive. They scored, and at home, Holy Cross coach Chesney is just so confident. When you see him interviewed, he just oozes confidence in what his team can do. And he's like, oh, no. We don't need to just keep pace and let the other team potentially dictate to us what's going to happen. We're at home. We're undefeated. We're going for 2. Now, technically, in FCS, by the third overtime, you have to go for 2. You have no choice. And then anything after that, it's nothing but 2-point conversions. So like 2 weeks ago, when Rhode Island and Monmouth went 7 overtimes, 5 of them were 2-point conversion plays, basically. But they went for it. They did the 2-point conversion. Holy Cross stays undefeated. Holy Cross, no matter what metric you use for FCS, because FCS uses more of an analytic, statistical-based, and which also factors in strength of schedule, as opposed to just the random coaches poll. And when you say coaches poll, quite often select media people do the voting for a lot of the coaches. It's been that way for 100 years. It's never going to change. At the smaller schools with smaller windows and maybe less access, though, in the day of streaming, to say I didn't have a chance to really watch this game or get tape on it. Every game is available. It's still the media guy that's technically making the vote, or the sports information directors making that. They're talking to media guys, and it goes in under the coach's name. But now Holy Cross has absolutely made a statement where, I mean, personally, I think they're in the top 3 now. Based on some of the, some of the results. You could argue that Weber State has earned a right to be in the top 3 now, but because of strength of schedule. But Holy Cross has certainly made a name for himself. 1-point win, sure. It was an amazing game. It is one of the most exciting football games I have ever watched. And as you can tell by the lines under my eyes and all the bags, I've seen a lot of college football over the years. This game was unbelievable. And it literally had every dynamic and every aspect that you would want in a game. Offenses, timely defensive stops, problems on special teams, big plays on special teams, the overtime, going for 2 as opposed to just trying to go to the second overtime. It had everything that if you were writing a script, that's how you want that game scripted out.
Nice. Yeah. 53-52 final and overtime here. Sluka, the quarterback for Holy Cross, absolutely incredible. 291 yards passing with 4 touchdowns and then 174 yards rushing on the ground. He was responsible for over 450 total yards of the 607 yards of Holy Cross. I mean, absolutely incredible. They are the leaders of the Patriot. I'm looking forward to watching this team in the FCS playoffs because they're going to make some noise in that bracket. They're going to make some absolute noise. It's going to be a very fun bracket. We're getting very close to those. We will be covering in full the FCS playoffs. As you know, here we do cover FCS. We're going to be starting to increase that content a little bit more here. I know that probably brings a little bit of cheer to Steve's ears over here as he's a junkie for the FCS, but rightfully so. There's some really good football in that division.